London, 1603. To the outside world, London was the beating heart of a rising empire. Crowns changed hands. Bells rang for a new king. Trade moved through the river like blood through a vein. But if you turned a corner, the city changed its face. Narrow alleys breathed rot. Doors were sealed from the outside. Prayers were whispered louder than reason. People believed the air itself was cursed. They carried charms instead of soap. They trusted God more than clean water. Welcome to London in 1603, a city that feared invisible demons. A city where superstition walked faster than knowledge, and where death moved quietly, house by house. In public spaces, London still looked ordered. Churches stayed open. Sermons continued. Well-dressed families moved through the streets as if nothing had changed. On the same roads, young noblewomen walked in cheerful groups, talking and laughing. Along the walls, beggars lay on the ground, sick or starving, too weak to move. No one stopped. No one looked down. The surface of the city held together. Beneath it, survival replaced dignity, and disease spread where order pretended to exist. Why was disease unstoppable in London in 1603? Because the city was built to trap filth. Medieval streets were narrow and unpaved. Waste flowed in open gutters. Wells sat beside latrines. Houses were packed tight, floor above floor, air barely moving. There was no idea of germs. Illness was blamed on God, bad air, or sin. City leaders focused on prayer and order, not cleaning. Churches stayed open, while streets stayed dirty. When sickness appeared, doors were sealed instead of drains cleared. The system chose control over prevention. It was a fatal mistake. The city did not fail by accident. It failed by design, through habits, beliefs, and rules that turned everyday life into a perfect path for disease. These conditions existed long before the outbreak and shaped how every resident lived, moved, and disposed of waste each day inside. The symbol of fear in London in 1603 was not a single building, but the locked house. When sickness appeared, doors were shut from the outside. Wooden planks sealed families in. Painted marks warned others to stay away. Inside, the sick and the healthy shared the same air. Windows stayed closed. Food arrived late or not at all. Outside, guards watched but did not enter. The house stopped being shelter. It became a container, a place where illness waited. Street after street, these houses formed a chain of silent rooms. Each one looked ordinary from a distance. Up close, they were places where fear, neglect, and disease were held together behind a closed door. The air felt heavy. Breathing took effort. Near a damp wall, a child sat on cold stone, knees pulled in, chest rising too fast. Waste moved slowly through shallow channels nearby. Flies gathered where food had been left and forgotten. Footsteps passed close enough to touch. Boots and shoes moving past without slowing. No one stopped. No one looked down. The stone behind the child was wet and cold against bare skin. A cart scraped along the street at dawn, wood grinding against stone. A bell rang once, then fell silent. Voices passed, low and brief, never staying. The child did not move. The street continued its routine around a body that was already failing. What remained was the stillness. A small figure pressed into the edge of the street while the city carried on, unchanged. The details people remembered were small and hard to forget. Milk left at doors turned sour by noon. Bread sat untouched because no one was strong enough to reach it. Chamber pots were emptied into the street before dawn, the sound sharp against stone. Sick bodies stayed inside with the healthy, sharing the same air, the same water, the same floor. A woman whispered prayers over a child who no longer answered. A man wrapped a blanket around someone who had already gone cold. At night, shapes were moved quietly to avoid notice. In the morning, the street looked the same. What shocked the most was not violence or noise. It was how ordinary these moments became, repeated house by house, until suffering blended into routine and stopped causing alarm. Authority did not disappear. It hardened. Orders were issued from a distance and enforced without care. Houses were sealed, streets watched, movement restricted. Guards stood at corners to keep people inside, not to help them. The wealthy found ways to leave. The poor were told to remain. Punishment came faster than aid. Anyone breaking isolation faced fines or force. No system existed to remove waste, bring food, or separate the sick. Control replaced responsibility. What looked like order was pressure applied downward, trapping bodies where they stood. The city did not lose power. It used it narrowly, to contain fear, not to reduce death. Today, paved streets and quiet buildings sit directly over places where sickness once gathered. The mud is gone. The open channels are buried. Clean stone hides what used to seep through the ground. People walk without looking down. Cafes open early. Doors stay unlocked. But the pattern remains. When danger appears, distance is still uneven. Those with means step away first. Those without stay where they are told. The structures look modern. The response feels familiar. What survived was not the disease. It was the instinct to protect order before protecting bodies. An imprint left beneath the surface that time did not erase. This is the DNA of the city. Not the sickness itself, but the way fear reshaped daily life and taught people who could move and who could not. The streets recovered. The buildings changed. The pattern endured. If this story felt familiar, tell us which city and country you want explored next. We build these stories to preserve lived memory. Thank you for carrying it with us and for treating shared history with care.